Hi, it's Nicole, and today I have a fun diving themed layout. This is for a sketch challenge over on the Traci Reed blog, and here I'm gonna splice in some footage of how I kind of set up this printable. I printed two of the pattern papers, and then in Silhouette Studio I just made some little small rectangles. I knew that I wanted to die cut some tiny stars to kind of sprinkle in with the layout, and I'll kind of explain why when we get past this portion. But I just wanted to show that this is something that you can do with digital products in case you were not aware. You can take a basic shape, even sometimes shapes that are within the collection themselves, and you can drag the paper images onto those shapes and it will fill the shape with that pattern. In this instance, I'm using the papers that are labeled as a solid, but they do have a slight texture to them. These are like some of my favorites in the pattern paper downloads. I just like the subtle texture that they have. So I made some rectangles over here, and you can see that basically once I drag and hover over the shape will almost grab onto it and you can see it fill the shape. So it's super easy, and I could have done this with patterns as well, but like I said, I'm going to be die cutting with these. So I just kind of picked some favorite colors, some that I felt like were represented in the stripe pattern that I printed, and then I brought in the black and I want to say maybe the yellow to kind of bring in some contrast. And you can see I've got the yellow 3x4 card. So basically I knew I didn't need a ton of printables for this one, so I fit everything onto this one sheet over here. I took the 4 individual icons that I felt like worked with a diving theme, and then there's a 3x4 card that says keep calm and dive in, and that's going to work as my title. And this just kind of goes to something that I do a lot, whether it's with hybrid products, digital products, paper products. I will pull out specific things from a collection to do more niche topics or more specific themes. So the collection that I'm using is the 50 Meter Freestyle, and it's very swim themed, the indoor swim lanes, races, that kind of thing. My daughter took more of a freestyle recreational dive class at our rec center pool, and she did it for about 6 months. I never took my DSLR camera with me. I was not going to take that anywhere near a pool, so I would just I just had my phone available to me, and a lot of times I would bring things to work on. So I stitched layouts while I was there. I did some computer stuff while I was there, and I knew that the photos were not going to be super great. So let's back up for half a second here. I kept my clips in order, and then I'm realizing that because I included that little screen recording, it is kind of messing up my order here. So I'm playing along with a sketch. So I kind of modified the sketch a little bit. It's got a 6x4 photo and a 3x4 photo. The 3x4 photo I have swapped for that card, and it's going to replace the need to add a title. And then, like I was saying, I'm not going to have great photos. So what I actually did for the majority of the photos is I opened up videos that I had taken on my phone, and I paused them, took a screenshot of them, and then cropped them. And then this is a 4x6 photo template, so I just kind of dragged and dropped stuff in there of her, doing different stuff. So not the greatest photos, and a solution to me with kind of fuzzy photos is make them small, put them in a collage, and they still tell the overall story. Now the sketch has, oh, it was on my phone. I don't have it to drop in here. I omitted like the layers of paper around the outer edges, and instead I chose to kind of just have those two big elements of paper going on. And I don't have a wide format printer, so I am limited to the size that I can print. So these are about, I want to say 8 inches square. For some reason they printed with a border, even though I told it not to. It was fine. I basically just wanted, you know, big squares that I can kind of layer up, and I'm mimicking the design that's going on with the sketch. And then I'm going to substitute the like layers that go around the frame with some hand stitching a little bit later on. So I'm just kind of making sure everything is lining up where I want it to go. That pattern paper with the pool tiles is my absolute favorite. I think that was the first time I've ever been like, oh, I kind of wish I had a wide format printer to print this in 12 by 12, but it's totally fine. I love kind of how printing these and putting them on, you know, white cardstock kind of gives you a little bit of like a breathing room, and you still get like that big impact of the fun pattern paper. And I only have these 4 icons that I printed. Like I said, I just went through the entire like embellishment folder and found stuff that I felt like supported this theme and this topic. So I have the dive board, this absolutely adorable little like sign man diving. I think he's diving off of like the platform for the lanes, but he's fine. He's diving off of my little diving board here. And then I just grabbed a couple basic images, so like the swimsuit and the goggles. And then the label is actually an extra when I work, especially with like Traci's new releases, and I tend to print a lot more stuff. I have a lot of leftovers, and so I keep them in a binder. And so this was a really good option to just kind of go back through, and I pulled out a couple just basic labels that were in the same color and picked one that I felt like I could print my journaling on. And then here I am just tracing out some pencil lines to do my hand stitching for. Before I go and stitch on my layout, I am going to type up my journaling. I know it's going to fit on this tag. However, what I like to do is I like to make some edges right up against where my text will print. And then I use those lines to guide myself as far as where I'm going to put that label. And I always put a piece of washi tape on like the side that feeds through my printer, just to make sure it doesn't get caught on anything and cause a jam. And there is my journaling all ready to go. So from there, I think the last thing that I did was stitch. So yeah, we're gonna make some tiny stars. I have not made tiny embellishments in forever. This is like my go-to. I prefer this over things like enamel dots and sequins. If you're new, it's super simple. I just do 2 pieces of white cardstock, and then the third top layer is whatever pattern paper I'm using. And I have this embellishment like storage container that I like to keep things in. A lot of times I'll end up with extras when I'm cutting for different layouts. So anything that's extra, I just kind of dump in here based on, you know, which die it goes to, what size it is. And then sometimes when I'm editing videos, I will sit here and make the blanks, like the white parts, to save myself time on a future layout. So I pulled out any of the whites that I already had cut, and I'm gonna grab my little die cut machine here and these stars and just kind of start running these through. This to me is it repetitive? Is it a little boring? Yes, but I like these kinds of things. I like being able to make my embellishments like match my specific layout with the other products that I'm using. And this was the intention of making those little rectangles. So I've got all of these cute little stars. I'm going to grab a sticky mat. This is literally just the same mat that I did my print and cut with. These are just generic sticky mats for digital die cut machines. I have these linked in my Amazon favorites. And it's just tacky enough to kind of hold the base layer for me, and I just start stacking on top. This is like my go-to. I get a lot of people that say they don't like to fiddle with stuff like this. They don't want to get glue on their hands, and I always just say, sticky mat. Get a sticky mat. It will keep your hands out of everything. It holds stuff together. Get yourself one of these little like gem picker tools. One side is like a wax tip, so it doesn't leave a residue. It's just tacky enough to kind of pick up the paper. And then the other end is kind of like a stylus, and it just helps nudge stuff and also kind of helps scrape any glue that can kind of ooze out. So just went through, made a bunch of those. Here I'm gonna figure out some thread colors. This is all leftovers from older cross stitch projects, and I just kind of keep pulling this out, hoping to find some stuff. At first I thought I wanted to do a yellow to kind of, you know, tie in with my title, but ultimately I kept going back to that pool paper. And then I looked at the sketch again and kind of saw that those outer edges that I'm swapping out for the stitching also kind of had like almost like a layered element to them. So what I did was I stitched a border, but it's two different colors. So like you can see in the upper left, when it goes around the corner, it kind of comes about 1.5 inches across the top of the layout, and then it changes color, stays that color all the way across the top, all the way down the right side, and then right when it turns on that lower right corner, after about 1 inch, I switch color. I like to do that. It's just kind of like a fun little pop of interest to your stitching. I've done rainbow stitching like that. I've done kind of sectional stitching. It just kind of brings a little bit more like fun, a little bit more play with your stitching. Here I am just kind of sprinkling in all of those little stacked tiny stars that I made earlier. And a lot of times this is why I like to have extras of the white bases, because sometimes I don't know what I want that top color to be until I start placing things, and I think to myself, okay, well, I don't want to put a blue on top of this blue paper. You're not going to see it. I didn't cut enough yellows. Now I need to make more yellows. I would rather have those blank white pieces and then come in with the specific color that I'm looking for the top. Hopefully that makes sense. And these are one of those things that, I mean, I could sit here and glue these on here all day and still find places to tuck them. So sometimes I have to just tell myself, like, it's good. Like, enough is enough. You're good. It needs to be done. The last thing that I'm going to do, I realized, I was like, oh shoot, this isn't from like a specific date. So, you know, how am I going to figure this out? So I took a date stamp, and I'm just going to do the month and year, and I'm pretty sure I kind of guessed on this. It was about a 6-month period, roughly from like September of 2023 to about February of 2024, because basically that's when Cheers started and we didn't have time to go to dive class. So last thing I'm going to do is not waste all these little stars. They're stars. Don't waste them. I'm going to put them all back in my little container here. And the next time I pull out these dies, I've got some good basic colors and some good foundations. So there is my completed layout and my take on the current sketch, and a little bit of details. Kind of a simple layout, but you know, focus on a specific, maybe more niche theme within a collection, and then some fun like texture details. So if you liked this, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below if you have any questions. Hopefully something I recommend here you have not seen yet, and if you haven't subscribed, I'd love for you to join me, and I'll catch you guys later.